In this presentation we'll cover the fillet and chamfer commands. Sometimes I might call fillet by accident. Both of them are found on the modified toolbar. Fillet is the second from the bottom right above explode. I go to fillet, and what fillet does, it creates a rounded corner between two lines or arcs. The first thing you may want to do is set the radius to figure out what size rounded corner you want it to use. So I'll hit R for radius, and I'll set the radius to 0.5. Enter. Select first object, so I can pick the first line, and then pick the second line. It will place a small rounded corner on that object with a 0.5 radius. The command ends after you've selected the two lines that you want to put the fillet on. I'm going to hit enter to re-enter the command. R for radius. Let's create a 1-inch radius. I'll select the lines. This time the lines are not intersecting or even close, but notice that it will extend the lines as needed and place the radius. I'm going to hit enter to repeat the command. This time I'm going to hit M for multiple and R for radius and type in 0.75, enter, and notice that when I select the lines this time, it places a 0.75 radius and the command continues because I selected multiple. I'll do that again, and I'll select it a third one. So notice that the lines can be intersecting, they can be far from each other, or they can be overlapping, and it doesn't matter. The fillet command will extend and trim as needed to create a rounded corner between those two lines that I've selected. I'm going to pan to the next group of lines or objects that I have here. And in this case I have a rectangle that I created with lines. Again, I'll use the fillet command. I'm going to hit R for radius. I'll set it to 1, enter, M for multiple, and I'll select the first corner and the second corner, and then I'll select them again, third time, and a fourth time to create rounded corners all the way around that object. Now, had that object been drawn with polylines, like the next object, I'll type P for polyline, and since I was already using multiple, it'll just continue on, and now it says select 2D polyline, so I'll select my polyline, and notice that it rounds all corners automatically at the same time. One thing that you'll have to be careful of is you'll have to make sure that your object is a closed polyline, otherwise it will not round your last corner. Next I'm going to go back to fillet, and we'll use fillet on some arcs. I'll select one end, select another end, and the results aren't what I expected because my radius is probably too large, so I'll hit U enter to undo. I'll type F. I'll go back to fillet, select F for fillet, R for radius, type in 0.25, then I'll select the top arc and the bottom arc, and notice it'll place a fillet between the two arcs. I should point out that each fillet that's created is a separate entity. Notice when I click on these arcs, they are separate entities. Next, I'm going to pan to another group of lines, and we will use fillet again. So I typed F, and I'm going to set the radius, R for the radius, to 0. So if it has a 0 radius, it's going to create a perfect intersection between two lines. It would normally place a rounded corner, but with a radius of 0, it's just going to form a perfect square corner with no arc at all. I'm going to select these two lines that are not even touching, and notice that it goes through and connects those corners and makes a perfect intersection. I'll go back and try fillet again, and if done correctly, when I select those lines, and I can spacebar to repeat, and it goes fairly quickly to have those corners, which in some cases weren't even touching, in other cases they were overlapping, and it trims them off or extends them to create perfect corners. So the fillet command with a 0 radius is your best friend. You're going to use that as much as the trim command when it comes to cleaning up corners and intersections. Very important that you master how to use the fillet command with that radius set to 0. I'm going to pan to the next group of objects, and we'll take a look at the chamfer command. Chamfer command creates an angled line between two existing lines. So I'll go to chamfer. D for distance this time instead of radius, and the distance, let's set it to 0.5, enter. Second chamfer distance looking at the command line, I'll hit enter to accept 0.5, select my first line, select my second line, and it's going to place an angled line between those two lines, a 0.5 from the intersection, or the apparent intersection. I'll hit enter. D for distance, I want to have 1 for the first chamfer distance and 2 for the second chamfered instance. I'm going to select my first line and select my second line, and notice that it's 1 unit down from the apparent intersection here to the corner there, and 1 unit from the apparent or 2 units from the apparent intersection here to that end. So it depends on when you have different distances for the first line and the second line, it does matter how you pick your lines. So I'm going to hit chamfer again. I'll leave the settings the same. This time I'll pick the top line and then the bottom line. So notice that I would get 2 different entities drawn depending on how I select those objects, because I have a 1 distance for the first line and 2 set for the second line. The chamfers themselves are entities. I'm going to erase them, and we'll go back to chamfer. And this time we'll type in A for angle, and I'm going to type in the distance of 1.5, enter, and the angle 45, enter. Now when I select my objects, it's going to place a 45-degree angle, which is 1.5 units from the corner to where the angle would start. So it's going to definitely take some practice on your part to work on the chamfer command. I'm going to hit chamfer one more time. We'll use angle, and I'll set that to 1. And I'll use 30-degree angle instead of 45. Select the first line, second line. Notice that it creates a line 30 degrees from the first line that I selected. Now if I try that same thing, I'm going to hit spacebar to repeat. I'm going to select the first line and the second line, and it went 30 degrees from the first line that I did. Spacebar to repeat. If I tried that from the other line, notice I would get different results. So it does matter when you're using angle, or you have different distances set, how you pick your lines, whether it's first or second. Okay, but that is the chamfer command. Please let me know if you have any questions in practicing it. It has a multiple feature just like the fillet command does. And the main thing to remember is that the command does end, so you have to hit spacebar to continue. And if you plan on doing a lot of objects, you want to use the multiple feature. There are some options with both of them. The undo option will simply undo your last 2 selected chamfers. There is the polyline command, which will act just like the fillet command when we filleted all the corners of a polyline. Distance is the distances from the apparent intersection. Angle is the angle that you would like the chamfer to be. Trim and method, make sure that you just leave those settings as the defaults, because you will always want to have the objects trim and extend as needed. So that's the trim and method features there. In multiple, if you have multiple chamfers that you want to place, use the multiple feature to save time. Go ahead and practice these. They do take a while to master, and chamfer only works with lines, and fillet works with lines and arcs. So fillet is the better of the 2 commands for creating perfect intersections if that is what you want to do, if that's the purpose you want to use it for. And in architectural drafting, the fillet and chamfer commands by themselves are not used too often, but the fillet command with the 0 radius set for cleaning up and making perfect intersections is used a lot all the time, so you will want to master that command. I cannot stress that enough. That's very important that you learn that one. So go ahead and practice these, and if you have any questions, make sure to contact me. This will wrap up and end the presentation for the fillet and chamfer commands.